All right, chapter 31, Cold Harbor, Hanover, Colorado, or Hanover County, Virginia. Two men in a field, an apparently clear sky. Hold on, I can't see. Something moved. Something moved, and I can't get my light the way I used to have it. All right. Where was I? In the monthly weather review, 2829, it is said that upon August 7th, 1900, two men were struck by lightning. The editor says that the weather map gave no indication of a thunderstorm nor of rain in this region at the time. In July 1904, a man was killed on the summit of Mount San Gorgino near the Mojave Desert. It is said that he was killed by lightning. 2 days later, upon the summit of Mount Whitney, 180 miles away, another man was killed by lightning. It is said in the Cell et Terre 17-42 that in the year 1893, 19 soldiers were marching near Bourges, France, when they were struck by an unknown force. It is said that in known terms, there is no explanation. Some of the men were killed and others were struck insensible. At the inquest, it was testified that there had been no storm and that nothing had been heard. If there occur upon the surface of this earth pounces from blankness and seizures by nothings and sniping with bullets of unfindable substance, we nevertheless hesitate to bring witchcraft and demonology into our fields. Our general subject now is the existence of a great deal that may be nearby or temporarily nearby, ordinarily invisible but occasionally revealed by special circumstances. A background of stars is not to be compared in our data with the sun for a background as a means of revelations. We accept that there are sunspots, but we gather from general experience in special instances that the word sunspot is another of the standardizing terms like auroral or meteoric and earthquakes. See Webb's celestial objects for some observations upon large definite obscurations called sunspots, but which were as evanescent against the sun as would be islands and jungles of space, if intervening only a few moments between this earth and the swiftly moving sun. According to Webb, astronomers have looked at great obscurations upon the sun, have turned away, and then looked again, finding no trace of the phenomena. Eclipses are special circumstances and rather often have large unknown bulks been revealed by different lighting effects during eclipses. For instance, upon January 22nd, 1898, Lieutenant Blackett, RN, assisting Sir Norman Lockyer at Visadrug, India, during the total eclipse of the sun, saw an unknown body between Venus and Mars. We have had other instances, and I have notes upon still more. The photographic plate is a special condition or sensitiveness in Knowledge 16-234, a correspondent writes that in August 1893 in Switzerland, moonlighted night, he had exposed a photographic plate for 1 hour. Upon the photograph, when developed, were seen irregular, bright markings, but there had been no lightning to this correspondent's perceptions. The details of the sheep panic of November 3rd, 1888 are extraordinary. The region affected was much greater than was supposed by the writer whom we quoted in an earlier chapter. It is said in another account of Simmons' Meteorological Magazine that in a tract of land 25 miles long and 8 miles wide, thousands of sheep had, by a simultaneous impulse, burst from their bounds, and had been found the next morning, widely scattered, some of them still panting with terror under hedges, and many crowded into corners of fields. See London Times, November 20th, 1888. An idea of the great number of flocks affected is given by one correspondent who says that malicious mischief was out of the question, because 1,000 men could not have frightened and released all these sheep. Someone else tries to explain that, given an alarm in one flock, it might spread to the others, but all the sheep so burst from their folds at about 8 o'clock in the evening, one supposes that many folds were far from contiguous, and one thinks of such contagion requiring considerable time to spread over 200 square miles. Something of an alarming nature and of a pronounced degree occurred somewhere near Reading, Berkshire, upon this evening. Also, there seems to be something of special localization. The next year, another panic occurred in Berkshire, not far from Reading. I have a datum that looks very much like the revelation of a ghost moon, though I think of it myself in physical terms of light effects. In Country Queries and Notes 1-138, page 417, it is said that in the sky of Gosport, Hampshire, night of September 14th, 1908, was seen a light that came as if from an unseen moon. It may be that I can here record that there was a moon-like object in the sky of the Midlands and the south of England this night, and that, though to human eyesight this world island of space, whatever it may have been, was invisible, it was nevertheless revealed. Upon this evening of September 14, 1908, David Packer, then in Northfield, Worcestershire, saw a luminous appearance that he supposed was auroral, and photographed it. When the photograph was developed, it was seen that the auroral light came from a large moon-like object. A reproduction of the photograph is published in the English Mechanic 88-211. It shows an object as bright as well-defined as the conventionally accepted moon, but only to the camera had it revealed itself. And Mr. Packer had caught upon a film a space island that had been invisible to his eyes. It seems so anyway. In Country Queries and Notes 1-328, it is said that upon August 2nd, 1908, at Ballyconnolly, Connemara, coast of Ireland, was seen a phantom city of different sized houses in different styles of architecture, visible 3 hours. It is said that no doubt the appearance was a mirage of some city far away, but upon this earth, of course. This apparition is not of the type that we consider so especially of our own data. The so-called mirages that are so especially interest us are interesting to us not in themselves, but in that they belong to the other order of phenomena or evidence that unifies so many fields of our data. That is, repetitions in a local sky signifying the fixed position of something relatively to a small part of this Earth's surface. We cannot think that mirages, terrestrial or extraterrestrial, could so repeat, but if in a local sky of this Earth there be a fixed region, perhaps not a city, but something of rugged and featureful outlines with projections that might look architectural, reflections from it, shadows, or Brocken specters repeating always in one special sky are thinkable except by the Chinese-minded who regard all our data as foreign devils. The writer in Country Queries and Notes says circumstantial accounts have even been published of the city of Bristol being distinctly recognized in a mirage seen occasionally in North America. If we shall accept that anywhere in North America repeated representations of the sky of the same city or city-like scene have appeared in the same local sky, I prefer myself a foreign devil of a thought and its significance, whether hellish or not, that this earth is stationary, to such a domestic vagrant of a thought as the idea that mirage could so pick out the city of Bristol or any other city over and over, and also invariably pick out for its screen the same local sky, thousands of miles or 5 miles away. In the English Mechanic, September 10th, 1897, a correspondent to the Weekly Times and Echo is quoted. He had just returned from the Yukon. Early in June 1897, he had seen a city pictured in the sky of Alaska. Not one of us could form the remotest idea in what part of the world this settlement could be. Some guessed Toronto, others Montreal, and one of us even suggested Peking. But whether this city exists in some unknown world on the other side of the North Pole or not, it is a fact that this wonderful mirage occurs from time to time, yearly, and we were not the only ones who witnessed this spectacle. Therefore, it is evident that it must be the reflection of some place built by the hand of man. According to this correspondent, the mirage did not look like one of the cities named, but like some immense city of the past. In the New York Tribune, February 17, 1901, it is said that Indians of Alaska had told of an occasional appearance, as if of a city, suspended in the sky, and that a prospector named Willoughby, having heard these stories, had investigated in the year 1887 and had seen the spectacle. It is said that having several times attempted to photograph the scene, Willoughby did finally at least show an alleged photograph of an aerial city. In Alaska, page 140, Miner Bruce says that Willoughby, one of the early pioneers in Alaska after whom Willoughby Island is named, had told him of the phenomenon, and that early in 1899 he had accompanied Willoughby to the place over which the mirage was said to repeat. It seems that he saw nothing himself, but he quotes a member of the D'Abruzzi expedition to Mount St. Elias, summer of 1897, Mr. C.W. Thornton of Seattle, who saw the spectacle and wrote, "It required no effect of the imagination to liken it to a city, but was so distinct that it required instead faith to believe that it was not in reality a city." Bruce publishes a reproduction of Willoughby's photograph and says that the city was identified as Bristol, England. So definite or so unmirage-like is the reproduction, trees and many buildings shown in detail, that one supposes that the original was a photograph of a good-sized terrestrial city, perhaps Bristol, England. In Chapter 10 of his book, Wonders of Alaska, Alexander Badlam tries to explain. He publishes a reproduction of Willoughby's photograph. It is the same as Bruce's, except that all buildings are transposed or a negative in positions. Badlam does not like to accuse Willoughby of fraud. His idea is that some unknown humorist had sold Willoughby a dry plate picturing part of the city of Bristol. My own idea is that something of this kind did occur, and that this photograph, greatly involved in accounts of the repeating mirages, had nothing to do with the mirages. Badlam then tells of another photograph. He tells that two men near the Mirror Glacier had, by means of a pan of quicksilver, seen a reflection of an unknown city somewhere, and that their idea was that it was at the bottom of the sea near the glacier, reflecting in the sky, reflecting back to and from the quicksilver. That's complicated. A photographer named Tabor then announced that he had photographed the scene as reflected in a pan of quicksilver. Badlam publishes a reproduction of Tabor's photograph, or alleged photograph, this time for anybody who prefers to think that there is somewhere in the sky of Alaska a great unknown city. We have a most agreeable photograph. Exotic looking city, a structure like a Colosseum, and another prominent building like a mosque, and many indefinite mirage-like buildings. I'd like to think this photograph genuine myself, but I do conceive that Tabor could have taken it by photographing a panorama that he had painted. Badlam's explanation is that mirages of glaciers are common in Alaska and that they look architectural. Some years ago, I read 500 or 600 pounds of literature upon the Arctic, and I should say that far-projected mirages are not common in the Arctic. Mere looming is common. Badlam publishes a photograph of a mirage at Mirror Glacier. The looming points of ice do look Gothic, but they are obviously only loomings, extending only short distances from primaries, with no detachment from primaries, and not reflecting in the sky. For the first identification of the Willoughby photograph as a photograph of part of the city of Bristol, see New York Times, October 20th, 1889. That this photograph was somebody's hoax seems to be acceptable, but it was not similar to the frequently reported scene in the sky of Alaska, according to descriptions. In the New York Times, October 31st, 1889, is an account by M.L.B. French of Chicago of the spectral representation. He saw it near Mount Fairweather. We could see plainly houses, well-defined streets, and trees. Here and there rose tall spires over huge buildings which appeared to be ancient mosques or cathedrals. It did not look like a modern city, more like an ancient European city. That every year between June 21st and July 10th, a phantom city appears in the sky over a glacier in Alaska. That features of it had been recognized as buildings in the city of Bristol, England, so that the mirage was supposed to be a mirage of Bristol. It is said that for generations these repeating representations had been known to the Alaskan Indians, and that in May 1901, a scientific expedition from San Francisco would investigate. It is said that, except for slight changes from year to year, the scene was always the same. That a number of scientists had set out from Victoria, BC to Mount Fairweather, Alaska to study a repeating mirage of a city in the sky which had been reported by Duck d'Abruzzi, who had seen it and had sketched it.